if you were to end up on a desert island somewhere, and you had only 5 records, what would they be? And this presumes you have electricity and you could play the records, of course.
Well, these kind of questions are always so difficult, right? Because it's
you hate them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's so difficult because there's like, I would probably not take a single record with me, or I would take 100. Yeah. If there was a 100, I could pick 100. I could pick, but then that top 5 is very difficult for me. And that the 70s rock, the late 60s rock, and all the 80s stuff and all that stuff is kind of like, it's there. It's kind of like, if you think of me as a songwriter, a kettle where you do your soup, the kettle is that, but then the soup is something else, right? And then I would probably pick something from the 90s, if I really had only 5 albums. There was one album that I bought maybe 5 or 6 copies of when it came out. I was so touched by that album, and I wanted all my friends to also hear it, and that was Jeff Buckley's Grace.
Okay.
When it came out in 94, I think. And so that would maybe be one, because I love his voice, and it's so dynamic and good songs, and I love that album. And there was something in his voice that really, like, after Freddie, I felt like, okay, there's another guy that I really love, singing wise. I would take Grace with me for sure. From that same era, if you think of Von Hertzen brothers and the kind of like the heavier part, what we have, it's not really relating to heavy metal. It's kind of like based on Black Sabbath and those early kind of like darker rock. And then the grunge thing happened when I was 17 to 23, in Seattle. And for me, I was never really a great fan of Nirvana, but I was a really big fan of Soundgarden for some reason. So Chris Cornell is one of my heroes also, because his singing is something like, I don't know, I just like that band. So I would maybe take one of theirs, maybe Super Unknown, which is also a great record. Super Unknown, yeah, that's a really good album with a Black Hole Sun and
Cameron drumming on there.
Yes, Matt Cameron is drumming. Yeah,
he's a thunderous drummer, isn't he? Absolutely.
And that somehow, like, their earlier work was good, like Bad Motorfinger and stuff, but I think that Super Unknown is kind of like the album of that band, so I would take that. So that's kind of like the heavier part. Jeff Buckley, Soundgarden. Then I think it was also like early 90s. Do you remember this band called Jellyfish?
Oh, I remember the name. Yeah, and I think there was one song in particular, but I can't remember it now. But vaguely, yes.
Yeah, so Jellyfish made 2 albums, if I'm correct. The first one is called Belly Button, and the second one is called Spilt Milk. And the second one is, the Spilt Milk one is a great pop rock album, like really, really good. So this is also like, people go and listen to that album. It's kind of like this songwriting is kind of Queenish and Beatles, type, but it's great compositions. And it's light. It's kind of like has that, if Soundgarden is dark and Jeff Buckley like goes into under my skin really like deep, then this is kind of like light for the sunny days on the island,
Yeah. Bit like ELO or something like that.
Yeah. And then I try to avoid now the obvious ones, right? I try to avoid the Pink Floyds and the Yes and all that stuff.
I mean, it's your choice.
Yeah, I would also take one of my all-time favorite albums is by the Cardigans, Swedish band.
Yeah.
And their, so to say, comeback album in 2003, I think it was called. It was called Long Gone Before Daylight.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard it, but it's a really chill. That would be like for the evenings, you know, on the island, on the shore. You know, it has one particular mood that carries through the album, and it has that kind of like evening vibe to it.
Right.
And the songwriter is insanely good, like really, really good. And I was very happy because the band, I followed them from the start, and then they had a little bit of a dip, and everybody did kind of their solo stuff, and then they came back with this album in 2003, I think, and it just made my day when it came. I was like, they're back, you know. You know, and I'm a pop guy, you know. I love good melodies, and I love breathing good pop songs. So this album is full of those.
Excellent. I'll need to investigate that. I don't know it at all.
Yeah, put it on in the night, few candles, put that on, and just enjoy. It's so good, Jim. It's like the sound of it is so sweet.
Okay.
So sweet. And then the last album has to be from, like we were talking earlier about songwriting and how I use syllables in certain places rather than words.
Yeah.
Sigur Rós from Iceland does that, and they don't have a language.
It's made up, isn't it?
They just like create their own language that suits the song, right? So I think their masterpiece is the Bracket album, the untitled one from 2004, maybe 2000, no, earlier, 2002. Yeah, all the songs are called Untitled 1, Untitled 2, and it has these brackets, so it's called the Bracket album. So let's say that the island has a little bit of a mountain in the middle, you know, and I go there to meditate. This is the album I'm going to listen to when I'm sitting there watching the vastness of it all. And I think with these albums, I'm covering many like needs that I have, like as a listener.
I guess you have a guitar with you as well, so you can write your own songs if you get bored of those five.
Yes, sir.
Living now this instant, but
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, well, you put a lot of thought into that. Thank you. Really,
I did, and I really tried to kind of like think of maybe albums that people don't know that I love, you know, because obviously there's gonna be the Day at the Races and the, you know, in rock, and you know, all these great rock albums that everybody loves and listens to. But yeah, I know those by heart, so I don't need to listen to them anymore.